Now, there's been a lot of talk about whether or not Steve Bannon will get booted from the White House. There's a lot of insiders that have pointed out the fact that Bannon has been sidelined by Donald Trump. I talked about that. Over speculation that he might be the White House leaker. In fact, Donald Trump is almost convinced that he's the White House leaker. Now, wait a minute. I thought that if Trump found out, he was going to go after him with extreme prejudice. Right? They're going to be fired. They're going to be fired. We might have pressed charges against the leakers. We got to go after the leakers, right? Well, look. I think it's fairly obvious by now that Steve Bannon is a leaker. Again, this is a guy who used to run Breitbart and still kind of does behind the scenes, even though it's not official. There have been stories about the administration, the H.R. McMaster stories, that have been leaked to Breitbart from the administration. You tell me who's the leaker, right? And look, H.R. McMaster, speaking of him, because of these leaks, well, he's been attacked viciously by none other than Breitbart, who happens to be an enemy of Steve Bannon. Now, there are other rumors, of course, which showed that the president was actually very angry at Bannon, because there were certain articles on Politico that showed that Bannon was considered the true face of power in the White House. So he didn't like that. No. Bannon's not in charge. I'm in charge. I'm in charge. I'm the president. Sure you are. Sure you are, Donnie. Of course you're the one pulling the strings. Of course. But not only that, but Trump has sparred, Bannon has sparred with Kushner, John Kelly, Reince Priebus, who's no longer there, and of course Anthony Scaramucci, that famous interview where he went after Bannon, saying that the guy sucks his own dick. Hilarious, right? So look, all this is to point out why Bannon is not the most popular person in the White House. In fact, he's probably the most unpopular person among the White House staff. So with that established, why is he still there? Why has he not been fired? That's an interesting question. Now, I've speculated, perhaps wrongly, that he was going to get the boot anytime soon. In fact, even Steve Bannon was speculating that he was going to last about 8 months in an interview. Yet, here he is, still there, 8 months. Even though he's sidelined and not going into meetings with Trump, he's still there. That is super, super weird. Now, you had these other guys. You had Reince Priebus, you had Scaramucci. And Scaramucci, he was the last guy you would think you would get booted, because he was so incredibly loyal to the president. But I guess the president doesn't care so much about loyalty. He's more than happy to throw anybody under the bus. I mean, look at Chris Christie, look at Rudy Giuliani, look at Sarah Palin, look at a lot of the other people that were so loyal to Donald Trump have been thrown under the bus. And yet Bannon, again, still there. Now, why could that be? Well, there's a couple of theories. One of them, according to some insiders, is that Trump is hesitant to kick out a man who is held in such high esteem among the president's key constituency of alt-right supporters. And I think that definitely plays a big part of this. According to a White House insider talking to Reuters, the president obviously is very nervous and afraid of firing him. He's actually afraid of Steve Bannon. Oh man, look, this guy, he's the leaker. I'm pretty sure he's the leaker, but I can't fire him. I'm afraid to fire him because I don't want this backlash from the base. But it actually gets a little bit more complicated than that. And let me explain. Now, again, look at his base right now. Okay, you've got a lot of people that have turned on the president. The president has an incredibly low approval rating to begin with. He's lost a lot of moderate Republicans. Most of the people in Washington now are starting to turn against him. You even have Paul Ryan, Ted Cruz, you have Steve Scalise. You have a lot of these Republicans now openly speaking out, especially after what happened on Tuesday. And his remarks on Charlotte, his equivocation, saying that, oh, the violence that was obviously caused by white supremacists, that was actually, it was both sides. It was both sides. Both sides are equal. And there's some very fine people on the neo-Nazi side. No, there are no fine people on the neo-Nazi side. There is no such thing as a fine neo-Nazi. I'm just saying. But Bannon, interestingly enough, again, he's still there, and Trump's comments kind of betray why. Because again, that equivocation is exactly what Bannon was looking for. In fact, Bannon here, let me get to the quote here from Bannon. According to Axios, reporting on Wednesday evening, Bannon was thrilled about the press conference, telling friends and associates that globalists were freaking out about the comments. The chief strategist called the press conference, quote, a defining moment for Trump, in which the president sided with his people. His people. Now, look, again, this is a very interesting dynamic, as I've previously reported that Bannon was on the outs. He has been in a sort of exile in the White House, as Trump has been very mad at him. But then here comes Trump defending his people. His people. In fact, one source told Axios, quote, Steve was proud of how Trump stood up to the braying mob of reporters. Now, according to Axios, they continue, Bannon has not meaningfully advised the president about his response to Charlottesville. He still is on the outs with Trump, who has been calling him a leaker for weeks, though the president described Bannon as a good person on Tuesday. They spoke by phone on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, according to a source with knowledge of the calls, but the response to Charlottesville has been all Trump, and Trump at its purest. On the phone to Bannon, Trump asked his chief strategist, quote, where does it end? According to a source with knowledge of the conversations, Trump wasn't referring to the white supremacists, but to the counter-protesters whom the president believes are on a slippery slope towards what he called changing history by tearing down monuments of Confederate heroes and potentially, he has said, the founding fathers like George Washington who owned slaves. Again, George Washington isn't the same as Robert E. Lee. And you could talk about, yeah, well, you know, he owned slaves and everything, but George Washington didn't rebel against America or try to destroy America. The founding fathers were by far not perfect human beings. They were very imperfect human beings. But at the same time, they didn't just try to destroy America. The Confederate generals, they did. They hated America so much that they wanted to break away from it and actually attacked it. There's a difference there. Now, to a simpleton like Trump, that's the same thing. But here's the thing, right? He's not just pandering, Trump, to his alt-right base. We've seen, thanks to his response to Charlottesville, and we've seen it in the past, his hesitance to, you know, go and disavow David Duke, which he eventually had to do thanks to pressure. Altogether, his hesitance, his weird hesitance to do what is the most easiest thing in the world to do in politics. Denounce hateful, racist people. He has seems to have a very, very hard time with that. And I can't quite understand why. A lot of people can't quite understand why. Oh, right. Maybe it's because he actually agrees with those people. And that's what I'm getting to. This is actually Trump's worldview. And that's why so many Republicans now in the establishment are pulling the shoe. Yes, they want tax cuts. Yes, they want deregulation just as much as anybody else. They want the policies that Donald Trump represents. But what they can't stand is the human whistle that he's now using. It has made him politically toxic. Even more so than he was before. He is now incredibly politically toxic. And Bannon is the same way. The establishment hates Trump. The establishment hates Bannon for many of the same reasons. So that's why, leaker or not, angry or not at him, Trump is standing by Bannon, which I couldn't have seen a week ago. But hey, you know, after Charlottesville, a lot of things changed. So, and look, again, he is in an ideological corner, an ideological and political corner with him, with Bannon and the alt-right. And that's exactly where Bannon wants him. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.